Immortality does exist in the Avatar world. Let me explain. You see, in the world of Avatar, we have an incredibly strong female character by the name of Kyoshi. And did you know that Kyoshi lived a 200-year-long life before eventually passing away? How did she manage to do this? Well, today we'll be diving into not only how she became quote-unquote immortal, but we'll also be explaining the entire life of Avatar Kyoshi herself. And let's just say it wasn't an easy one. She has one of, if not the most complex and heartbreaking backstories in the entire Avatar series. So without wasting any more of your time, let's dive right into the life of Avatar Kyoshi. Kyoshi was the daughter of a master airbending nomad by the name of Jessa, who was very highly regarded as a master airbender. Along one of Jessa's many journeys to the Earth Kingdom, she met and fell in love with a man by the name of Hark, who was from a family of actors. He would eventually lead Jessa down a dark path as an outlaw on the run. She would later cover her arrows with tattoos of serpent snakes. The two would go on to form a group called the Flying Opera Company. This group eventually became part of one of the most powerful crime networks in the entire world at that time, the Dao Phi. Later they had a daughter by the name of Kyoshi, and despite her mother being a very talented airbender, Kyoshi actually took after her dad and started out as an earthbender. Some believe that the reason behind this may have had something to do with the tainted spirit of Jessa, considering how she abandoned her air nomad roots and went into a life of crime. But after having Kyoshi, the two decided to move away from their life of crime and instead became a traveling family that was constantly on the move. This lasted for around 5 years, and then they decided that they wanted to go back into the life of crime. So they abandoned their daughter Kyoshi in a village called Yokoya. They also left behind a chest that contained Jessa's fans, dress, and makeup that she commonly used when doing jobs. They also left a journey on the history and customs of the Dao Phi. Kyoshi would soon find herself homeless on the streets of the village. She did all she could just to survive. She ate leftover trash, and when she had a fever, she rubbed her head on a giant block of ice. Because of this hard life, she grew up resentful of her parents, and I can't really blame her. They chose an exciting life of crime over their own daughter. After 2 years on the street, she was visited by an airbender and an earthbender by the names of Gyanzu and Kelseg. They were in search of the next avatar. They also allowed her to take the test, but Gyanzu doubted the likelihood of her being the avatar due to her height. He thought her much too old to be the avatar's age. She picked her first toy, and it was the first of the 3 correct answers. But then she ran off with that toy before completing the test. The two didn't do much to stop her in the end because they couldn't really see the future avatar being some homeless orphan girl. They would later find a boy by the name of Yun, and they believed him to be the next avatar. However, Kelseg later went and tracked down Kyoshi. He soon realized that she was homeless and alone, so he decided to take her in. She brought with her the case and journal that her mother had left to her, although she refused to open either of them at this time. Gyanzu built a giant mansion in Yokoya for the next avatar to stay in. And with Kelseg now being the adopted father of Kyoshi, he asked Gyanzu to allow Kyoshi to work there as a servant. Gyanzu allowed this, but even with her now living within the mansion, her life was still incredibly hard. She was constantly made to feel like an outcast by the other servants and townsfolk, mostly due to her height. And an example on how her life truly weighed on her mind was when she fell asleep in the yard. Some fireworks began to get set off, and instead of enjoying them like everyone else around, she ran away. She was so scared that she would end up being blamed for them going off. She was harassed so much that she began to question everything she did, always believing that someone would find fault with whatever she tried to do. Another thing that stood out about the young avatar was how she could only bend giant rocks. She was completely incapable of bending the smaller ones. This is the complete opposite of all other earthbenders. Normally, they can only bend the small ones and not the big ones. Kyoshi's height complex would soon kick in, and she blamed her size for only being able to bend these giant boulders. She would soon stop practicing earthbending altogether, as she longed for a normal life. Kyoshi would later become good friends with Yun, the boy believed to be the avatar, and a firebender by the name of Rengi. Rengi was the daughter of Yun's firebending teacher and was also in charge of Yun's protection. The three would live together in the mansion and soon grew very close. Rengi always tried to get Kyoshi to fight back against her bullies. She did this because she feared Kyoshi would one day be alone without her there to help. Yun and Kyoshi soon grew closer than just regular friends, and in one instance they almost kissed one another. They stopped themselves because they knew if they got together it would cause a great scandal. Like, the avatar can't be seen with the servant girl, it just isn't right, which is what I assumed they thought at that time. One night Kelseg overheard Kyoshi reciting a poem. It was a poem that he had first heard from his very old friend Avatar Kuruk. It was here that he realized that Kyoshi was actually the true avatar and not Yun. After revealing this to Kyoshi, she was in disbelief. But Kelseg then decided that it was best for them to keep it a secret for now while he figures out what to do next. One day, Kyoshi accompanied Yun as they visited the Fifth Nation. The meeting went wrong and they were ambushed. Yun was soon captured, and given that they were in the South Pole, there was nothing around for him to bend. But right then, Kyoshi, using her incredible power, lifted Earth from the depths of the sea floor and used it to destroy the fleet of pirate ships. With the others now freed, they were able to finish off the pirates and win the fight. But after her powerful display, Gyanzu went from seeing her as the poor little homeless servant to a very powerful avatar candidate that he could use to earn a lot of money. He soon took her away from her duties as a servant and started treating her as if she was a queen. Yun and Kyoshi were then told to display firebending in front of him, but neither of them were actually able to. So Gyanzu took them to a remote village and proceeded to poison them with incense. He made it so that they were completely paralyzed and unable to move. Gyanzu then asked the spirit of that village which of them was actually the true avatar. The spirit then needed some of their blood to know for sure. But when it went for Kyoshi, Yun managed to move and push her out of the way. But even despite his best efforts, the spirit managed to get a hold of their blood and soon revealed that Kyoshi was the true avatar. After this, Gyanzu took Kyoshi and left Yun behind with the spirit. He sealed off the cave and left Yun for dead. Kyoshi was so enraged and yelled so loud that fire started to come out of her mouth. She tried her best to attack Gyanzu, but he covered her mouth using earthbending, nearly suffocating her in the process. Kelsig then appears and tells Kyoshi to run as he fights Gyanzu. The fight, however, soon ended with Gyanzu plunging sharp tin rocks into Kyoshi's adopted father. After witnessing the death of Kelsig, Kyoshi became completely enraged and entered the avatar state for the very first time. She then leveled the entire village, burying Gyanzu into the ground. But he managed to survive by tunneling himself underneath the ground with earthbending. Kyoshi later returned to the mansion and informed Rengi on everything that happened, and told her that she was leaving the village for good. She took her mother's case and journal with her, but before she left, she looked inside the case for the very first time, and found her mother's war fans inside, along with a headdress and some makeup. Rengi then came to Kyoshi and told her that she was going to leave with her, because she'd almost certainly die if she was left alone. Kyoshi then vowed that she would one day become strong enough that she could take revenge on Gyanzu for what he did to Yun and Kelsig. Kyoshi then read her mother's journal and realized that the only ones that could possibly aid her at this point was the Dao Fai. She notes that she doesn't desire to learn the elements because she's the avatar. She wants to learn them so that she could one day kill Gyanzu with her own power. Kyoshi then uses the journal to find Lek, Karima, Wang, and Lao Ji, her parents' old gang. But despite meeting these four, she was still saddened by the fact that this was all the forces that they had. A waterbender, 2 earthbenders, and a very old but very important earthbender. But we'll come back to why he's important for her life later in the video. Together, the 6 would work together and eventually become Kyoshi's team avatar. It was also around this time that Kyoshi started to develop feelings for Rengi, but ultimately decided to push them down so as to not distract her from her end goal, Gyanzu. But in order for her to stand a chance against Gyanzu, she would first have to learn all 4 elements. So she asked Lek, Karima, and Wang to teach her, but they said for them to do so, she would first have to swear an oath to the Dao Fai, and become a criminal for the rest of her life. Kyoshi would soon agree despite how upset it made Rengi. Later, Kyoshi went to Lao Ji and asked him to teach her in the art of killing, for you see, he was once upon a time a deadly assassin for hire. He agrees and they begin right away. Later, while visiting the Dao Fai in a criminal village, Rengi took part in a Lei Tai, a 1v1 fight, and while she was fighting, she suddenly stopped moving and allowed her opponent to punch her in the face. This shocked and worried Kyoshi more than anything ever before. Rengi quickly got back up and broke the guy's leg like it was nothing. She later explains to Kyoshi that this is what it has been like for her watching the person she loves constantly putting themselves in danger. She says that if she was really doing her job, then Kyoshi would never have to feel scared but only ever feel loved. Kyoshi then reveals that she has felt love this entire time. She then leans in and kisses her. This moment was the happiest moment in Kyoshi's entire life. Later they met a man named Mok, who entrusts them with a very important mission, to free one of their own from an Earth Kingdom governor named Tei. But before they could leave on their mission, they were hunted down by a Shirshu hunter, who was tracking them under orders from Gyanzu. This piqued the interest of the group and they started to question why it was actually hunting them in the first place. Kyoshi then reveals everything about her being the avatar to them, and they accepted it after Kyoshi waterbended for the first time. They then kicked her training into high gear and pushed her to the peak of her abilities. During her training, she could feel Kelsig looking down on her with pride. She also began to use her mother's fans to help her with her bending, and they would soon become a very important part of who she was as a warrior. When preparing for her mission, she donned her mother's headpiece and fans, and they all used the face paint from the case to hide their identities. She painted herself in white and red face paint along with black coal. This was the very first time that she presented what would become her very iconic look to the world. And while the others were still preparing, she met with Lao Ji, who informed her that this wasn't going to be just a regular prison escape. They were actually also going there to kill Tei, the governor holding the man hostage. But despite the fact that she once had a great desire to kill, during the mission she decided that in fact she was going to protect and save people instead. And she did that by using her waterbending to separate the others from ever getting to the guards to kill them, and later used her airbending to push Lao Ji away from Tay. She then took Tay and met up with the others, who had already freed the prisoner. They then returned him to Mach and found out that the prisoner was actually the leader of the Yellow Necks, one of the biggest criminal organizations around. The team then left, but Kyoshi decided that with her new change of heart that she would keep an eye on the Yellow Necks and their leader now that he has returned. As they were watching the group from the sky, they saw as they terrorized the innocent people of the village. So Kyoshi flew down and challenged the leader to a lei tai. But shockingly, she was immediately overpowered when she was hit by a bolt of lightning. This was a shock to her and everyone around because at that time, lightning bending was nothing more than just a legend. And on top of that, everyone believed the leader of the Yellow Necks was nothing more than an earthbender, not a firebender. He then continued to shoot bolts of lightning into Kyoshi as she was knocked on the ground. Kyoshi then passed out, and when she awoke, she heard screams of pain from Rengi. Rengi was being tortured by the same lightning that was just torturing Kyoshi. And after seeing the woman that she loved in so much pain, Kyoshi entered the avatar state, and unlike before, she completely controlled it. And because of the immense control that she had over this insane power, she was able to levitate the leader away from Rengi and into the air before slamming him into the ground, killing him almost instantly. And after she returned to the ground, almost immediately she passed out for 3 whole days. And although she was brought to the best healers around, her hands would forever be burnt with scars on them. She would later go with Lek and Rengi to find gloves in a nearby store. But after leaving the store, her, Rengi and Lek were shot with poison darts. Rengi was taken away and Lek began to have an allergic reaction to the dart. When Kyoshi was able to move again, she checked Lek's pulse, but it was not there. Heartbroken and angry, she buried Lek and with the help of the others went to kill Gyanzu. She waited in a nearby pub for him to arrive, and when he did, he told her to come with him, or else he would destroy the whole building and kill everyone inside. Kyoshi refused, however, and when he went to bring down the building, Kyoshi met his power with her own, and held the building in place. But it was at that moment that a shocking figure reappeared from the doorway. It was Yun. But Kyoshi noticed that there was something far different about him. Something was missing. Something almost human. Yun took the rock from the table and forced it into Gyanzu's body. He then winked at Kyoshi and left. Kyoshi waited for everyone to leave the building before walking out, letting the building fall behind her. Gyanzu was now dead. Kyoshi then parted ways with her team and shared a very sad goodbye with Rengi, before eventually traveling to the Southern Air Temple where she would learn airbending from the monks. But that's not all, as during her time in the Air Temple she also met and learned a lot from Avatar Kuruk. He taught her all about her spiritual side as an avatar. Kyoshi would go on to master all 4 elements and became widely known for her many talents. She was both feared and envied all around the world. But she never once hid who she truly was. She fought to push for equality in all corners of the world, including the conservative Earth Kingdom. She would later return to her hometown Yokoya, where she found that it had been taken over by men who abused women and belittled them. This enraged her greatly because she had been fighting the last few years just for equal rights for all. She then witnessed as a man knocked a basket out of a woman's hands and laughed as he did so. She walks over to him and puts his head into the ground. She then realizes that she can't always be here to protect the women of this village. So she then decided that she would teach all the women of the village how to fight and defend themselves. And within just a few years of her training them, the great Kyoshi warriors were formed. And much later, Kyoshi would become widely known for her confrontation with Shin the Conqueror. Shin was a tyrant who desired world domination. He was actively expanding his army all across the corners of the world. But it wasn't until he came for Kyoshi's hometown that she decided that he should be stopped. He was very weak when compared to the powerful Avatar, but whether it was bravery or stupidity, he stood his ground against her. But ultimately, she decided not to engage in combat against him, but instead, in a massive display of power, separated her island from the homeland, accidentally killing the tyrant in the process. But Kyoshi did also state that no matter what happened that day, she would have returned and killed him anyway. She states that she will always do what needs to be done to maintain the balance in the world. The island that she separated became widely known as Kyoshi Island. And by killing Shin that day, she began a great era of peace all around the world. Sometime later, she was called to Ba Sing Se by the Earth King. You see, his unpopular rule led to an uprising in the city and he wanted Kyoshi to stop it by any means necessary. Kyoshi, however, refuses, and the king calls upon his guards to arrest her. But that quickly proved futile, and the king was left frozen in fear on his throne. The two did manage to come to a compromise, however, when the king decided that he would give the people of the nation a voice, and Kyoshi decided to protect Ba Sing Se's heritage from destruction. Kyoshi would later go on to train up the elite forces known as the Dai Li, who were charged with the city and the king's protection. Though it should also be noted that the Dai Li did go on to become incredibly corrupt during the 100-year war, and it was because of this that Kyoshi did say to Aang that she regretted ever actually creating them. Kyoshi would then go on to die at the old age of 230. She was able to live such a long lifespan because of the teachings from Lao Ji, the man she once called a friend. He is also referred to by the title the Immortal, and he was the one that taught her the incredible technique for eternal youth, by preventing her cells from decaying, which takes a lot of spiritual peace. But it should also be stated that this effect can't actually last forever. But there are some hints within her novels that claim that Lao Ji may have actually been 4,000 years old. But to put it in simple terms, he achieved a level of enlightenment through meditation that somehow made him immortal. And honestly, aside from all the theories online and the few minor hints within the Kyoshi novels, it's incredibly hard to truly understand how Kyoshi learned to live such a long lifespan, or how anybody else could ever achieve it. Maybe it actually was through some form of spiritual enlightenment, or maybe it was just her sheer willpower. It's really unclear and uncertain, but hopefully we actually get some much needed information on this in the future Kyoshi movie that is yet to be made. But until then, that's going to do it for this video on the life of Kyoshi. This video took a very long time to put together, so if you enjoyed it, please leave a like and comment down below. And if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, then please hit that subscribe button and join us, because I really enjoy making videos like this on the Avatar series. But with that, that's going to do it for me in this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and peace.